All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something that runs our lives more than we'd probably like to admit: the habit loop. We're going to use a really fascinating story from The Power of Habit to see how our brains build these powerful routines that basically run on autopilot. And it all starts with one simple, absolutely devastating question. A man named Eugene Pauly is at home, and his wife happens to mention that their son, Michael, is on his way over. Eugene just looks at her completely blank and asks, "Who's Michael?" You know, that question, it was the first sign of something terrible. A totally common virus had somehow found its way into Eugene's brain, and it destroyed the part responsible for making new memories. He became known to science as EP, a man whose past was perfectly intact, but his future, well, it was just the same present over and over and over and over again. So EP becomes this walking paradox, right? He couldn't tell you how old he was. He couldn't even sketch a map of the house he'd lived in for years. And yet, he could get up, walk to the kitchen, and cook himself bacon and eggs. He could find the bathroom every time. He could even go for a walk around the block and find his way home. So it raises this huge question. If he had no new memories, what on earth was guiding his actions? That exact question is what got a researcher named Larry Squire completely fascinated. It pushed him and other scientists to look way deeper into the brain, into this really primitive, kind of ancient structure. And the answer to Eugene's mystery, believe it or not, started to show up in the behavior of lab rats running through a maze. So, scientists over at MIT started focusing on this thing called the basal ganglia. If you picture the brain like an onion, all the complex, high-level thinking is happening on those outer layers. But deep inside, right near the brainstem, you've got this old, powerful engine. It's not involved in conscious thought or memory, but it's the master of storing and running all of our automatic routines. It's our habit center. The experiment they set up was actually pretty simple. They put some rats in a T-shaped maze, and at the end of one path, there's a little piece of chocolate. A loud click signals that a gate is opening, and the rat's job is to go find that reward. All the while, they've got these tiny sensors in the rats' brains watching exactly what's going on. And here is where it gets really, really interesting. On the first day, the rat's brain is just firing like crazy, analyzing everything: the sounds, the smells, the walls. But as that rat learned the route, as it became automatic, its overall brain activity just plummeted. It's like its brain was going on standby. The task wasn't a puzzle anymore. It had become a habit. This is basically the brain's ultimate life hack. It's a process called chunking. The brain takes this whole sequence of actions, hear a click, turn left, run straight, find the chocolate, and it collapses it all into one single automatic routine. Why? To save energy. It frees up our mental horsepower for more important stuff, like, avoiding danger or figuring out what to have for dinner. But here's the kicker. The scientists noticed that the brain activity didn't just flatline completely. They saw two really distinct spikes of activity, one right at the beginning when the click sounded, and another one at the very end when the rat got its chocolate. And that pattern, well, that revealed this incredibly simple but powerful three-part structure that's at the core of every single habit we have. And this is it, the habit loop. It's so simple. First, there's a cue. That's the trigger, the click of the gate. That cue tells the brain, hey, time to run this program. Then comes the routine, the action itself, running through the maze. And it all wraps up with the reward, the chocolate, which basically tells the brain, yes, that worked. Remember this whole sequence for next time. And every time that loop is repeated, the neurological connection just gets stronger and more automatic. The cue and the reward get so tightly linked that your brain starts to anticipate the reward the second it sees the cue. And that feeling of anticipation, that's what we experience as a craving. It's the engine that drives the whole loop forward. So, okay, that's rats in a lab. What about us? Well, this exact same three-step loop is running our daily lives to an incredible degree. It automates behaviors that are so complex, it's honestly a miracle we don't have to think about them at all. I mean, just think about backing your car out of the driveway. Remember when you were first learning? Every single one of these steps took intense concentration. Now, the moment you grab your car keys, that's the cue. Your basal ganglia just takes over and runs this whole complicated dance as one single smooth automatic chunk of behavior. And here's why all this really matters. This process isn't just happening by accident. It's being engineered all around us.
Why do you think fast food fries are designed to dissolve on your tongue almost instantly? To deliver that salt and grease reward as fast as possible? Why does every single coffee shop in a chain look and smell the same? To give you a consistent cue, triggering your routine to buy that latte and a pastry.
So, if our brains are basically hardwired to create and hold on to these powerful automatic loops, are we just stuck? Are we passengers in our own lives, just running these old programs? The research gives us a really clear and, frankly, a very hopeful answer. Absolutely not. As the MIT researchers figured out, a habit never really goes away. It's always there, encoded in our brain, just waiting for the right cue to come along. But, and this is the crucial part, they also found that habits are surprisingly delicate. They can be changed, they can be redesigned. And that leads us to the golden rule of changing habit. You can't just extinguish it, you can't just delete it, but you can rewrite it. The real key is to keep the old cue and to deliver the same reward, but to consciously swap in a new routine. Once you start diagnosing your own habit loops, you can start swapping out the pieces and rewriting the code that runs your life. Eugene's story is incredible because it shows us just how fundamental habits are. They allowed him to have a life even when his memory was gone. They were acting without his permission. But understanding how they work, that simple cue, routine, reward loop, is like getting a user manual for our own brain. It gives us the power to look at our own autopilot and decide if we want to be the one flying the plane.